Well, shalom, homies. What's going on, folks? How are you doing tonight? What's going on, Jubilee? I got old Jubilee here. You want to say hi? Come say hi at least. You guys got to see her. Come on. There's nothing. We'll Nantucket. Bam. Say hello.
Hi.
Say hi.
Hi.
That's what they're up to. You want to tell them what you're doing? What are you getting ready to do?
I'm picking up the toys.
You're picking up toys?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a big part of our life?
Mm-hmm.
I'm making tortillas.
What are you going to do today? Oh, yeah. Tell them what you're going to make.
I'm making tortillas.
You're making tortillas?
Yeah.
Nice.
And meat. Not much.
It's snowing. That's exciting.
Yeah.
It stopped.
We made cookies last night.
Yumi loves making cookies. She loves making sweets.
But we were trying to make stuff today because we didn't know it was prep day today, and until Dad told us. But we made cookies last night, so we got prepared a little.
Prepared a little. Do you like making some tortillas?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. That's awesome. That's great. I'm glad to have it. We're hoping for a lot of snow. My girls really wanted to snow a whole bunch so they can play in it like crazy.
It's already snowed maybe less than an inch.
Not much. Just a dusting.
Just dusting.
That's a dusting.
Just a little blanket of
Well, have fun making your tortillas.
Yeah.
Just wanted to
Bye.
stop in and let them say hi. Go on. They're onto it, y'all. I'm just telling you. Children in the early years are the biggest investment of your entire life. But then there comes this turning point where they become highly productive and helpful. Yes. And it's so good. It's so good. Oh, we're getting shushed by Mom. It's nap time. I know some of you are like, hey, dude, just be loud. Be loud. Let your babies get used to it. We've done all the stuff, you guys. We've tried all the stuff over the years. Be super loud, noisy. Parents are desperate. You'll never find people that are more absolutely committed, especially parents of twins. Savage club. You can't even possibly fathom. But I digress. I'm getting off topic here because what I wanted to talk to you guys about was I found a secret society that was conspiring against David in the Psalms. Yes. It pumped me up. You ever find a secret society in the Bible and you're like, yes, finally, conspiracies are in the Word. Yes, son. Like we deal with so many different conspiracies. Like the little thing, Jubilee's talking about making fresh milled tortillas. Okay. I'm just going to say it, y'all. If you haven't watched our video, Becoming a Millenite, it's right there when you turn to our page. It's stinking epic because it changed our life so powerfully. It's just a simple little thing in your life, but rooted in the feet of that's just ridiculousness. Was this massive conspiracy to poison people, fundamentally, just to ruin their health, to just destroy our health. And it just started from my wife would eat bread. When we got married, she had, she was all gluten intolerant, so she did the gluten-free lifestyle continually for a long time. Minor synopsis. We'll get to conspiracies. This is definitely one of them. But she couldn't really eat it. It would make her sick. She would just feel terrible and lethargy and exhausted. You guys ever eat food and you're exhausted almost instantly? You're just like, I am so tired after eating. That bothered us. Like we were like, this is not the way it should be. And I'm like obviously a freak level extremist kind of a person. And we're like, we got to figure out what this was. Put a cork in it. We just abstain from eating bread more or less. And we're just like, I guess we'll eat this other stuff. But that causes us to be all constipated and just like crabby too. We're like, it's not that much better. We paid a lot more for it. And it wasn't the same, it wasn't the same. We still had the longings for the bread. And so we tried using organic flour and we're like, it's still good, but it still wasn't there. I loved challah. She used to make challah a lot. And that was like a big highlight reel of my life. I would just eat a prodigious amount of challah. I was like, you can make a gigantic loaf for me on Friday and I'll eat it for days. I love that. But someone shared with us that video from Sue Becker, Brad Becker's. And she talked about the staff of life or the bread of life. We shared that video as well. But it blew our stinking minds. We're like, no way. No way. And there was this lady that we were living with at the time, living in her driveway. She was hand grinding. It's a savage way to enter into the life. But she's just taking grain. Wheat grows in berries, basically, is what they say. And there's all kinds of different wheats. There's lots of different grains that you can do. But she was a hand grinding. I think it was spelt. I think she hand ground spelt and made this almost like a loaf cake kind of thing. I ate that with some raw goat's milk, and I felt like energized and electrified for hours. And I was like, this is amazing. I feel so good. I still feel that way when I eat spelt. It's like a superfood for me. Anyways, I was so pumped up because all the other grain that we've been given in our life, it's in absolute entirety. That wasn't the first time I ate fresh milled flour. I just found it the other day when we were watching Rolling with the Reynolds. My wife and I were watching the video where we are down in Texas and we are on Corpus Christi Island. And there's this like national seashore state park. No, the national park. It's a seashore that just runs for like 60 miles of beach. That's out off the coast of Texas. Anyways, there was a government shutdown at the time. The park was completely empty of employees, but free for all the wild citizens. And it was like a badland zone, man. It was awesome. There's all these wild people just parking everywhere you're not supposed to and just living there. It was so fun. We loved it. People were orderly. It wasn't Mad Max. It was awesome and it was free. Anyways, we met our friends Adam and Joni Wegman. Adam's got a YouTube channel. You guys can check it out. I'll put his link. Adam the First Man, I think is his YouTube channel. Anyways, very talented jeweler, amazing man of Yah, terrific family that we traveled around with for a while. And his wife and him were Millenites, but they were like closet Millenites. I think they mentioned it a little bit, but they weren't salesmen for it. You know, my wife and I are like ridiculous fanatics of salespeople. When we love something, we don't sell the stuff. We sell the idea to try to get people fired up about it and just let them get off and run into it. You know, we're like, go for it, go for it, go for it. You're not going to find links in the description below for bread mills and that kind of stuff. We just are fired up about it. And we just want people to, we want to be evangelists about it. You know, we're like, set us free. Our guts are so much better and we can poop. Hallelujah. Some of you are staring at the screen right now. You're like, I haven't pooped in 3 days. That's savage, bro. I'm sorry. That's difficult. Life can be so much more miserable than anybody gave you a heads up warning about. It's insane. But anyways, hang in there. There's options. There's always hope. There's always hope. I love people and I want them to be well because you can think so much better when you're not just feeling like crud all the time. You just can think better. The world is less depressing. There's hope. There's opportunities of a future, a promise of tomorrow. That's a lot better than the despair of the past. You know what I'm saying? But Adam and Joni, one day we were parked out over the bay. It was just so beautiful and picturesque, and there were pelicans, and they made fresh milk pancakes for us. That was our first time we ever actually had fresh milk, but I didn't really register it. I mean, it was good.
Take a second to look out my front window. Isn't that amazing?
It's not your front window.
Well, this is my window that I see when I wake up in the morning, and I asked Chelsea to open the blinds and let me see the beautiful view.
Please let me see my neighbor.
And you know who my neighbor is? Besties. I could just cry that Adam and Joni Wegman are like my view on waking. What amazing.
we had an amazing experience that I have never experienced birds of this size, this close, in the wild. Pelicans.
So, one of the cool things that we've been able to do is we have a picnic table out in between our rigs. And so we'd have breakfast or lunch or dinners out there depending on weather. And it was so awesome because Adam's got this Coleman 1964 original limited edition made by made in the millions, but it's still limited because it's not readily available.
But that's all it was. They even gave us a mill. They gave us a Wonder Mill. They gave me this. I didn't know at all what it was. It was just some thing. Chelsea handed me some tools, like 2 plastic containers. And I was like, I don't know what this is. Shoved it under the RV and never used it one time. I never used it. It had duct tape on it. And I was like, I don't know what this thing even is. No one gave me like the explanation of the why of what it was. That wheat in its natural form is locked up all the nutrients and it's like preserved nutrients just waiting. And I know some of you are super anti-wheat, and I just hang in there for a second, y'all, because a lot of the problems that the vast majority of all the problems people have with wheat is because it comes from a form of it that's altered to where they've taken out the bran and the germ. The bran is that hard casing on the outside that is so much of where our fiber is and a lot of other nutrients that are inside there. And then the germ is what is like literally causes that little sprouting of life to come to the surface to live. That's where so much of these oils and fats and just density of complexities of amino acids and proteins and lipids, all this stuff we need for life is all locked up in that little seed. And when you fresh grind it, it opens it up and it's just bursting with vitality and life right then. So when you eat bread that's made from that, or you eat a pancake or cinnamon roll that's made from that, it satisfies your body in a way that sifted flour, which has the bran and the germ removed, cannot. But the sifted flour is shelf stable. It can stay on the shelf for a long time, very, very long time. And so it's good for mass production and consumerism, and it's easier to make into goods. It's much more stable in flavor. It doesn't really change. It's going to be pretty much ubiquitous so that every time you go to Panera Bread, it's going to taste the exact same. Whereas when you fresh mill, there's variances of it. I can get a bucket of wheat, a bucket of kamut from one farm and get it from another farm. It's going to taste different sometimes. So anyways, all that stuff is just moved away. But that single change in our life trajectory altered the course of our family's experiences tremendously. We were not a family that baked bread and made tortillas, fresh made tortillas. Like, it was never our lifestyle. When that mill came into our house, it transformed so many different avenues of what we did with our time. It's now a staple in our life that bread is going to be made on the regular, even if it's just biscuits, even if it's pancakes, if it's waffles. There's this entire culture that is now a part of my family that centers around the kitchen and the mill, and we have a Nutri-Mill, and then we have a mixer. Gosh, stinking love those little tools. They make our life so full. And now it's this part of my children's experiences of what makes their normal day-to-day life fun. Jubilee's so pumped. All throughout today, she's been talking about making tortillas and making tortillas. She loves to make tortillas. She jams on it. And she's old enough to use the tortilla press. And she's just like, sweet. But she's watched her sister do this for years. And it's been a part of that eating by the sweat of your face. It's that reward from hard labor. And it's really cool to see her as she's growing up, finding the things that she enjoys. Naomi loves sweets, man. She loves to make sweets of all different kinds. She wants bakery shop. She wants a sweet shop. It's like her dream. She would love to do that, filled with horses, of course. But until then, she's just fired up when she gets to make cookies. And it's just beautiful. It's beautiful. That's an aspect of our culture that is so divorced from the vast majority of us, because prepackaged and stuff that's ready to go on the shelves is the norm. It's just what we've grown up with. It's part of our culture, is divorced from that. And so much of what I found as our families picked up these kind of older ways of doing certain things, maybe a more traditional lifestyle, we've received from it all of these other tendrils of experiences and of memories and of keepsakes of time that we would have never had. We would have never known we were missing out of. We would have never known we were missing out of. My family didn't even realize how much we're missing out on a dining room table. But a simple act of having a dining room table and sitting down and eating our meals together. Like, we light a lantern at mealtime always. And it's just this routine and this consistency, and there's conversation and there's prayer and there's this actual intentionality to our mealtime that was otherwise just kind of happenstance and all over the place because we got babies in high chairs, and it's very disorderly. But the table in and of itself is one of these great gifts that we can so take for granted, especially if we have a screen that competes for that time, or these other things that are taking away from us our opportunity to face-to-face time. It's a beautiful thing that you frankly just don't even realize is there until suddenly it is. Suddenly you don't realize it's gone or lacking in your life until you suddenly get it back, and you're like, wow, that's tremendous. That's wonderful. But the other day, I was reading through Psalms, and sometimes I just pick up Psalms and I just start chewing into it. I don't have like a direction when I get into it. A lot of times I go to Psalms when I'm like, oh my gosh, my life is difficult. There's some horrific things that happened recently to our family. We're going to talk about that probably more next week because it has life-changing consequences for us. Brutal. But a lot of tears, a lot of deep brokenness and grief in our home. The sound of weeping has filled our home. So when I was reading in the Psalms, I stumbled upon this chapter, and I was like, oh yeah, let's talk about it. Chapter 55. But it eventually led me to chapter 58, where I found these phrases and these descriptions of David talking about his prayers. These are what people will call the imprecatory prayers. This is where David is talking about breaking the teeth of the wicked. And I used to love these. So like, you guys just snap their teeth off in their mouth. Those kinds of prayers. Some of you guys have prayed those prayers. You know what I'm saying? Like significant times in your life where you're just let them all die. And no, one of the supernatural gifts that Yeshua gives to his people is the ability to forgive our enemies. And it's a superpower in and of itself. However, there's some who will not stop. And I think it's absolutely justifiable asking the Father to intercede. And if these people will not stop these actions, that he would do whatever it takes to stop them. It's not wrong to pray that the Father stops their heart if they're not going to turn, they're not going to repent, and they continue to go harm and cause chaos and destruction and devouring of innocence. Just my point of contention, for what it's worth. There's lots of prayers in the scriptures where the people are asking for the wicked to be judged in accordance with the Father's will. That being said, I know that's a little contentious for some of you all, but some of you may never really experienced horrific evil incarnate and watched people prosper continually. But David deals with those kinds of prayers in here, watching the wicked prosper. But anyways, there's this, what David said, evening and morning, I call upon Elohim, and Yahweh saves me. Evening and morning, and at noon, I complain and moan, and he hears my voice. He has redeemed my life in peace from the battle against me, for there were many against me. And it's easy for us to read this and think of, oh yeah, he definitely had, King Saul was out to get him for a long time. For a long time, he was being hotly pursued by his enemies. But there was so many different instances. This is fresh on my mind because my children and I just finished reading the book of 1st and 2nd Samuel together. And I was just, you get there's this joyful, awesome, exciting point of the story, and then it shifts. About the time of Bathsheba, there's this change of the narrative. There's a change of the cadence where you literally go from this apex period of David's ascension and kingdom to where from that point on, there's this devastating onslaughts and battles and pain and affliction and conspiracies and insurrections. I mean, there's this takeovers of other people rising up and usurping and stealing power. There's this just shiftingness that takes place that is just now pervasive, and that pulls you through into the book of 1st Kings and 2nd Kings. And it's just this leaning into what the heck is happening in Israel. What happened to the people of Israel? What happened to the Father's chosen people? And you watch this degradation of the story all the way through to the division of the kingdoms of the house of Israel and the house of Judah and the war between each other. And you're like, wow, this went bad fast. But David had so many individuals who were actively seeking to destroy his life, way more than the ones that we would maybe see on just a surface level read. And I was coming across this because David's way of intercession, David's perspective on prayer was so precise and so powerful, especially as he matured on in his life. And the Psalms give you a glimpse of that in a way that many of the other scriptures just don't. And that's why I invite you guys, when you are dealing in those afflictions, those infirmities, to turn to the Psalms, to read these words out loud, because as you do so, you will find those little moments of relationship You will relate to people in the book of Psalms in ways that you can't understand them as individuals, as actual people going real life circumstances, when it's just a mention in a story or it's just a paragraph or two. And that's where I have found so much of a value, y'all, in the Apocrypha, in a lot of the other texts that, like, this is Yah's scripture. That's one that I got, which has a lot of the collection of the Apocrypha in there. Some of these were books that were preserved in our scriptures up until maybe the last 150 years. Others of them weren't. But many of them offer these depth of insight into the minutia of people's story that's so much deeper. You know, the books of First Esdras and Second Esdras, they zoom in on the story of the times of Ezra and Nehemiah, that window of time, so much more in depth. And it gives you a lens of seeing these people as people. You see so much more of what there really is going on in their life and how they're battling through that, how they're overcoming it. And it allows you to have this depth of relationship with them that's just different and it's beautiful. And the Psalms, I'm so thankful that we have them, because it's this experience of David's prayer journal. It's his good, bad, and ugly of what he's dealing with. And David's laboring through it at this point in his life. Listen to this. Even he who sits enthroned from of old does hear and afflict them, Selah. Those with whom there are no changes, those who do not fear Elohim. He has put forth his hand against those who are at peace with him. He has broken his covenant. His mouth was smoother than curds, yet in his heart is fighting. His words were softer than oil, but they are drawn swords. See this duplicitous nature of David's enemies. David is becoming well acquainted with the men of hypocrisy, men who are acting and masquerading as a version, a smooth, sweet, a soothsayer on the surface, but inwardly have this plotting bitterness and rage against him. But he says, cast your burdens on Yahuwah and let him sustain you. He never allows the righteous to be shaken. For you, O Elohim, do bring them down to the pit of destruction. Men of blood and deceit do not reach half their days, but I trust in you. And David doesn't say this from a place of lack of experiences. The last words out of David's mouth are for his son to remember specific individuals, to make sure they go down to the grave, that they are punished. They receive mishpat, justice, for what they did. One of them's name is Shimei. Shimei is this man who came out at David when he was in the greatest, most afflicted moment of his life. I should just read it to you. Stinking kick him in the teeth. You ever been kicked when you're down? You know what I'm saying, that phrase? David's getting kicked while he's down. As he's fleeing the city, running for his life. Let's go to Absalom's. The conspiracy of Absalom is ripe and is bursting. David flees for his life with all of his family and his people. Check this out. Here's what happens. Shimei comes out to meet him while he's in that state and on his way out. This is chapter 16, verse 5. And when sovereign David came to Bahurim, he saw a man from the clan of the house of Shaul, whose name was Shimei, the son of Gera, coming from there. He came out cursing as he came. For some of us, we think that means he's saying cuss words. We lack a depth of understanding about what cursing is in the scriptures, also about taking the name of Yahuwah in vain. These concepts, through a more modernized version of religion, have been formulated to translate to saying certain cuss words, dirty words. That's what we think of as cursing. When somebody is cursing, they are invoking a detriment against you. Go into a study of cursing from Genesis through to Revelation. Cursing is bringing about words. It's a prayer. It's an intercession in its own way against somebody in a powerful way. It's a destruction of that person selectively. It's calling upon other gods, other spirits, other entities to bring desecration and devastation to that person's life. It's far more than just cussing at him. The story often gets portrayed like he's just, throwing rocks at him and saying dirty words at him and mocking him. Way worse than that. What he is doing is literally trying to bring down on David's head despair, and ruin. And my contention is always when someone gets stirred up like that, you got two main options. Either it is, as David will defend, it could be from the Father, that this could be Yahuwah appointing him to do that. It also can be the devil working through his spirits and his power entities to motivate that individual to do that. People that have these doors open to the enemy, people that have demonic possession and oppression that can suddenly come in and speak very specific cutting lies and degradation against you. If any of you have been going on in your life and trying to make significant changes to come out of the life that you used to live, or to be a different man or a different woman, to transform yourself, to make significant changes for the better, and then you have that person come back into your life who says the most precisely poisonous, hurting, wounding statements to you, things that nobody on this earth could have said to such an effect, to deal with an insecurity, to deal with a pain, a betrayal, a loss, to inflict damage upon you when you are already vulnerable or insecure about your new identity. That's the effective level of cursing when it is brought into your life. It is so powerful because it has this lingering long-term effect to your spiritual nature. It's trying to devour and consume the spiritual nature of you, the transformative work of the Holy Spirit, the set-apart spirit in your life. It's trying to degrade that and drive you back down to the pits of despair and to death. David is being hit by that at this moment. And he pelted him with stones. David and all the servants of David and all the people and all the mighty men were on his left and on his right. That's David's Gibberim, his special forces. And this is what Shimei said as he cursed, get out, O man of blood and man of Belial. Yahweh has brought upon you all the blood of the house of Shaul, in whose place you have reigned. And Yahweh has given the reign into the hand of Absalom, your son. And see, you are in your own evil, for you are a man of blood. And Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, said to the sovereign, why should this dead dog curse my master as sovereign? Please, let me pass over and take off his head. And the sovereign said, what have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah? For let him curse, even because Yahuwah has said to him, curse David. Who should say, why did you do that? And David said to Abishai and to all his servants, see how my son, who came from my own body, seeks my life, and how much more now this Benjamite alone, and let him curse, for Yahweh has spoken it to him. Yahweh does look on my affliction, and Yahweh shall return good to me for his cursing today. And as David and his men went in the way, Shimei walked alongside him on the hillside and cursed him as he went, and threw stones at him and kicked up dust. And the sovereign and all the people who were with him became weary, and they refreshed themselves there. You can see the effect that this has on them. David, on one side, his response is to allow the Father to sift out the fruit of this at its end. If David had taken immediate retribution and defended himself in his honor there, David instead, he says, listen, hold yourself off. Hold yourself off from the vengeance. Let Yahuwah reveal whether the words that he's saying are true. If I am a man of Belial, these are the accusations leveled against David, that he's a man of Belial, that he is a man of blood, and that all the bloodshed that's happened on King Saul's family is on David's head, that it's David's fault that the house of Saul went into such bloodshed. But all throughout the story of David, you will see how he maintained an innocence and guarded himself from executing retribution against Saul and Saul's children or children's children. And even to an extent that the uncle of Saul, Amnon, the leader of his army, when Joab kills him after he had sent him away in peace. David had sent him away in peace to have a relationship where he said, all right, I'm going to go gather all the people of Israel and bring them to unite them under you, David. And he sent him away in a place of peace. Joab came to him surreptitiously. This was David's commander of his army, came to him and said, let's meet together. And then he killed him on the spot. He shed the blood of that man and put it on his war belt in a time of peace. That ultimately will be one of the things that leads to Joab's death later on in his life. But Joab did that because he was avenging the bloodshed that was spilt by Abner was the commander of Saul's army. And Joab is wanting blood vengeance on him because Abner had killed his brother. And so there had been this trail of vengeance and revenge that had been going on back and forth. And David in this moment has been humbled tremendously, and he sees this oppression that's taking place, and he literally puts himself in the position of knowing that the Father can vindicate him and let his words to be established to be truth, or let them be established to be a falsehood. And ultimately that's what happens, is Absalom is put to death in the battle. David is vindicated and comes back in, and Shimei is forced to eat of that fruit of it, that he had been sitting here cursing David and making all these accusations. And you know what? In his end, David is innocent of that man's blood, but he makes sure that that man receives the just payment for the way that he treated them, and that the curses that he brought against David, the accusations against him, were brought on his own head, because David protected and established Mephibosheth, which is one of the children of Saul through Jonathan, his grandson. He established him, gave him all of Saul's kingdom back, his lands back. He gave him the right to sit at his own table. David looked after the posterity of Saul, and yet you had others that were looking after David with this spying eye, this bitterness and this hatred. And Shimei reaped it and received that back on him. But David was a man who was well acquainted with adversaries and with people persecuting him and seeking his destruction and finding ways to try to wound him and afflict him. And I want to show you this in Psalms 58. Turn with me for a second. We should go to Isaiah 58. Savage. You guys need to be pumped up. Go to Isaiah 58. Read it again and again. This is Psalms 58. Would you indeed speak righteousness in silence? Do you judge straightly your sons of men? No. In heart you work unrighteousness. On earth you weigh out violence of your hands. The wrong have been estranged from the womb. These who speak lies go astray from birth. Their poison is like the poison of a snake, like a deaf cobra that stops its ear, so as to not hear the voice of the whisperers, or a skilled caster of spells. O Elohim, break their teeth in their mouth. Break out the fangs of the young lions, O Yahuwah. Let them melt. Let them vanish as water. Let him aim his arrows that they may be cut down. Like a snail which melts away as it moves. Like a woman's stillbirth, let them not see the sun. Before your pots feel the thorns, whether green or ablaze, he sweeps them away. The righteous rejoice when he has seen the vengeance. He washes his feet in the blood of the wrong. And man says, truly, the righteous are rewarded. Truly, there is an Elohim judging in the earth. Now, when you go through a surface level reading of this, you're not going to see that very strongly. There's not a pronounced declarative understanding of what are the whisperers. And that, for me, you guys, is how scripture studies break down. That's when I get curious. It's something piques my curiosity as I'm reading along in the scriptures. And there is a value in a multitude of translations. I like the ISR Scriptures translation. It's one of the more readable ones. It has the restored names. It's very valuable to me. But there's a loss of depth with English language constantly. And so when you stumble across a word that's peculiar, like there's this other verse that I came across the other day, and it said, and he stunned them. And I was like, what the heck? I don't think I've ever read the word stunned in the Bible, like really read that. And that launched me into going and studying for myself. What is the Hebrew word for that? What's the Hebrew word for that? Because I know if I break open what's inside the Hebrew, I'm going to find a completely different complexity of depth. There's 13 stories, 14 stories of other things going on behind the scenes that are being lost in translation. And so I looked up that word for the whispers, the voice of the whispers. And the word is lachas, and it means those who are the charmers, the conjurers, the spellcasters. What he's talking about, he's literally asking him to silence the voice of the whisperers, the charmers. These are the people that are working and spreading oaths in secret. And the word that later on is often translated again, the next word, or the skilled caster of spells, that one is kavar, which are those who are binding together, tying magical knots, tying their charms together through magic. He literally is saying, there are these people who are working, inspiring against him. These are the people that David is interceding against. This whole entire chapter is David praying and interceding against these individuals. These are people who have bound themselves together through magical knots of oaths of allegiance. These are people speaking in secret chambers, these spells, these demonically empowered curses to target and destroy David's life. This is a conspiracy, a fraternal order that is laboring against David. And it's echoed not just in this psalm, but at other times. As you're reading along in the Psalms, we'll miss it if we don't understand what these words are really meaning. But they're also utilized when he talks about him, like in Psalm 38:12, when he says, seek those who seek my life lay snares for me and imagine deceits against me. David's describing these individuals will go in and imagine, and it's not just the type of imagine like they're hoping for. So much of what magic or ritualistic magic is combining imagination with intention and a spiritual offering in order to produce this work, this magical work that will come to pass. They are imagining the destruction, the deceit, the pitfalls of David coming into their life, and they're trying to bring about that production into his life. They're trying to curse him, but it's through intentionality, it's through devotion, it's through sacrifice, it's through a spiritual allegiance to a different God. That's the kinds of individuals who are laboring against David. And it's way more than that. It keeps going. In Psalm 41, again, it says, all who hear whisper, all who hate me whisper together. They imagine the worst for me, and they curse me with disease. David is experiencing a multi-mode attack against him. He's talking about them cursing him for deceit, with destruction, with disease, with confusion. And later on in Psalm 94:20, he also says, they shall the throne of wickedness have fellowship with you, who brings about mischief by statutes. The thrones of wickedness. He describes these people sitting on thrones of wickedness, devising methods of mischief, of confusion, of strife, of turmoil, of affliction, that they are creating statutes, ordinances, laws, considerations. This should, for those of you that have not read Daniel recently, this is the guys that were wanting to be in the position of leadership that Daniel was promoted to. Daniel, the teenager from Israel, Judea, who's taken in and suddenly shown all of this incredible favor by the king. They're jealous of his position. They want to be where he is. They hate that he has this purity, this sanctity, this holiness. And they're looking for ways to set him up to break the law. They're finding ways to create statutes from their thrones of wickedness to cause Daniel to be punished and lose his position and lose his life. That's the conspiracy of these secret societies that do operate. And this has been going on through these methods for a long time. And it's playing out in our life today. The type of methods and maybe the versions of the tactics have changed somewhat, but ultimately it's the same individuals who are ruled by a different spiritual force. And because of that, they see us as these cataclysmic enemies, these adversaries. And they position themselves in such a life to work together and collaborate with others who have the same modality, who are trained in the spell casting, who are trained in the magical ritual spell casting. And they will gather together and target individual believers. And that's why some of you who are dealing with tragedy in your life, difficulties in your life, it may be hard for you to see past the physical circumstances to understand that there can be individuals targeting you in the physical realm, the spiritual realm, who are allied against you, that you have an adversary who hates you, the ancient hate, who works to destroy and diminish your capacity for freedom and for hope and for life and for vitality, who's seeking to ruin the things in life that make it good and peaceable and honorable and lovely, who is instead devoted to deception. The way that he's described in Revelation 12, I'll just read it. It's better to just read it. The archons, the great dragon. Revelation 12. And a great sign was seen in the heaven, a woman clad with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. And being pregnant, she cried out in labor and in pain to give birth. And another sign was seen in the heaven, and see a great fiery red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on his head. And his tail draws a third of the stars of the heaven and throws them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth to devour her child as it was born. And she bore a son, a male, who was to shepherd all the nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught away to Elohim and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by Elohim to be nourished there 1,260 days. And there came to be fighting in the heaven. Michael and his messengers fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his messengers fought. And they were not strong enough, nor was a place found for them in the heaven any longer. And the great dragon, this is, the word is like a mighty, massive, complete totality. The power and the influence and the capacity of the dragon is reaching this pinnacle at this point in history. My contention for those of you guys that have been taught your whole life, this event took place at the beginning when there was the first fall of the devil and a third of his angels fell. I do not believe that event took place way back when, but in fact, this is something that is going to take place where there will literally be the fallen ones, a third of those fallen ones coming down to the earth again. And they will, like it says in the Psalms, they will die like men. They'll be able to be hunted. They'll be able to be hunted. These immortals will lose their immortality and be able to be fought against, labored against. This is a big deal. This time of total deception will be brought because there will be many lying signs and wonders, and many of these immortals, they're described as the metaskizmatzatoi, will have the capacity to directly come and contend for the souls of man to lead people astray. And in doing so, it will open up a war of the ages, the ultimate war, the great showdown. But this is our adversary. And this is the one who can resist him. Now, on the same time, as much as we can talk about the ability for the enemy to have this grand conspiracy of the immortals and those physical assets on the earth who will ally themselves with him, who will align themselves in their allegiances and fidelity to him, understand and don't ever overlook this. Michael, a chief messenger, basically the word is describing the first of the principal messengers, the angels. He's the first of them. His capacity to contend with the devil is unthwarted at every instance that we come across it. He is undefeated. He's undefeated. He doesn't lose a battle. He shows up in Daniel chapter 9. When Daniel's praying and interceding and asking the Father to bring understanding to him, to give him an answer. For 21 days, he's in the middle of this prayer. And when he first started that prayer, it says Yahuwah sent forth a messenger to answer him. However, when that messenger was going, the principality over Persia resisted him. It came and caught that messenger up, wrapped him up, and refused to let him get to Daniel until the chief messenger, the prince Michael, came and resisted the prince of Persia and allowed that messenger to come and give Daniel his answer. Michael defends and interjects himself at many different times throughout the scripture. And every time when he's dealing specifically with these other principalities, very powerful ones, that are governing nations like the Prince of Persia, that he overcomes. He overcomes in the book of Jude. He also overcomes here. I say this to give you guys an understanding of maybe an accuracy of capacity that the enemy has, that our adversary has, in comparison to the righteous warrior and the angels that are our protectors and our intercessors that can come alongside us and nourish and sustain us and strengthen us and deliver us and save our lives. They're incredibly powerful and never to be relegated to the back burner of understanding their capacity. Here in Jude, but verse 9, we'll go to verse 8. And in the same way, indeed, these dreamers defile the flesh and reject authority and speak evil of esteemed ones. But Michael, the chief messenger, in contending with the devil, when he disputed about the body of Moshe, presumed to not bring against him a blasphemous accusation, but said, Yahuwah rebuke you. Michael understood rules of engagement. He understood that there was a way to deal in fighting with the devil. And for this moment in time, the devil was specifically trying to get the body of Moshe. He wanted the body of Moses. Michael was sent to stop him from gaining access to the body of Moses. And it says specifically at the end of Deuteronomy that Yahuwah buried Moses. that he personally hid him. He hid him away so that his body would not be able to be found. But the devil was working his way to find that body. Now, if Moses is one of the two appointed witnesses, if it's Moses and Elijah, like those two that came to Yeshua on the mountain transfiguration, if that's the moment and why he wanted that body, to maybe stop that or try to prevent that resurrection and his ability to come and be one of those faithful witnesses at the end of days, that could be one of the reasons of it. There's different speculation as to why he wanted the body of Moses. Some have speculated that because Moses was meeting with Elohim face to face, that he was there, he was physically being augmented when he was on the mountain, to where his face was glowing. He was becoming like a shining one, to where his face was like the sun. He was glowing, to where people, the Yahudim, literally were like, cover your face from us because we don't want to see your face. It's too much for us to look at. So he put a veil over his face when he would talk to the people. Some believe that because of that, Moses' physical body was altered, was changed permanently. And that's why the devil wants to be able to use Moses' body for his own resurrection event, his own masquerading, his own implantation of the spirit of Antichrist, the raising up of this son of perdition, that it would be done through Moses' body. But these are some of the speculations that are out there. I don't have a 100% substantiation of like, I'm totally persuaded by that theory or that idea just yet. But I share them with you because they're fascinating, they're interesting, and things for you guys to consider in your own life. But what I'd love to see is that Mikael is triumphant in each of these encounters. He is an overcomer. And it should remind us that even the messenger has the capacity to overcome the wiles and the schemes of the enemy. And greater power has been given unto us than that which the angels were given through the redemptive work and the relationship of the atonement that Yeshua gave to us. Yeshua had the absolute authority and dominion. It has taken dominion over death and Hades himself. Like it says Revelation 1, man. It's like introduction to it. He's like, listen, I am the living. Do not be afraid, he said to him, chapter 1. I am the first and the last and the living one. And I became dead. And see, I am living forever and ever. Amen. And I possess the keys of Sheol and of death. He has demonstrated to us his authority and his dominion over that. You don't need to be fearful or troubled by these times that we're living in, or when there are those who are demonized or occult workings that are taking place against you or targeting your community or your area. You need to engage it and be ready to engage it at any time that it presents itself. Go to Mark chapter 5. Bam. And they came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gadarenes. And when he came out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit, who had his dwelling among the tombs. And no one was able to bind him, not even with chains, but because he had often been bound with shackles and chains, but the chains had been pulled apart by him, and the shackles broken to pieces, and no one was able to tame him. And continually, night and day, he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying out and cutting himself with stones. And seeing Yeshua from a distance, he ran and bowed to him. An immediate change of disposition came over him. A man who went from complete and total possession, crying out, cutting himself in the tombs. Do you want to talk about a terrifying place that would be? This man would be known to the entire region. If a guy is sitting in the tombs, screaming and wailing and cutting himself, it's some notoriety over them. And yet no one had been able to tame him. It says in another gospel that there was two of these men. It zooms in more specifically on this one guy in the book of Mark and one of the other gospels. But this was a place of horror. I mean, and if those of you have not encountered overt demonic manifestations in people, when they start screaming in these guttural screams and these groans and these voices, these mocking, cynical voices, they're very good at being scary. They're very good at being creepy or weird or terrifying. And if any of you have ever hiked in the woods and you've heard screams in the woods, and what that produces, that fear is there. But you see, instead, there's this shift when Yeshua enters the scene, where there's the absolute admission of understanding the authority that he has and a submission to him immediately. And having called out with a loud voice, they said, "What have I to do with you, Yeshua, Son of the Most High? Swear to Elohim not to torture me." For he had said to him, "Come out of the man, unclean spirit." And he was asking him, "What is your name?" And he answered, saying, "My name is Legion, because we are many." And he begged him very much that he would not send them out of the country. Now a great herd of pigs was there, feeding near the mountains, and the demons begged him, saying, "Send us to the pigs, so that we enter into them." And he gave them permission. And the unclean spirits came out and entered into the pigs. There were about 2,000. And the herd rushed down the steep place into the sea and drowned in the sea. And those who fed the pigs and reported it into the country. And they went out to see what had taken place. So they came to Yeshua and saw the demon-possessed one, him who had the legion, sitting and dressed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. And those who saw it related to them what was done to the demon-possessed one and about the pigs. And they began to plead with him to leave their borders. And as he was entering into the boat, he who had been demon-possessed begged him that he might be with him. Yeshua did not allow him, but he said to him, "Go home to your friends and report to them what the Master has done for you and how he had compassion on you." And he left and began to proclaim in Decapolis all that Yeshua had done for him, and all marveled. The people of the region rejected the demonstration of authority when he showed up in their presence. They rejected him utterly. They were fearful of him. They didn't want anything to do with him. They didn't want somebody to come in and change the status quo. They didn't want somebody that came in there and brought this methodology of deliverance ministry into their midst, and they wanted him to be getting away from them. And as much as the man who was healed wanted to be with Yeshua, he told him, "No, the power of your testimony is going to be with those who you came from, the people who knew you, your friends, your family, the people of the country who have heard you wailing, who have witnessed you become this monster. They are the ones who need to see you as you are." And it said many marveled, all marveled when they saw this transformation. And this is revealed to us, the specifics of why that is, in Revelation 12. When you go further on to seeing about that devil and that dragon, "And the great dragon was thrown out, that serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who leads the world astray. He was thrown to the earth, and his messengers were thrown out with him. And I heard a loud voice saying in the heaven, 'Now have come the deliverance and the power and the reign of our Elohim, and the authority of his Messiah. For his accuser of our brothers, who accused them before our Elohim day and night, has been thrown down. And they overcame him because of the blood of the Lamb, because of the word of their witness, their testimonies. And they did not love their lives to death.'" This power of testimony, losing the fear of death, losing the not loving your life when faced with death or when you're striving against death, that you won't cling to your life, and being willing to share your testimony, to share your experiences. And some of you may think your testimonies are not that powerful, are not that transformative, but listen, unless we go out and faithfully proclaim the gospel of the kingdom of Yeshua, that if we don't carry with us the promissory note of hope that comes from our relationship with him and the transformative work of what his spirit is doing in our lives and the authority of the word, we are depriving the world of the cure that it's ultimately seeking. We instead are only offering them the white sifted flour of our life. We're offering them a version of bread that will fill them up but not leave them satisfied, that will give them a taste of what we believe without the true power of healing and the medicine and the deliverance of what it can bring into their life. When we bring to people a very watered down version of who we really are and what we really believe, because we have the fear of men, or because we have the doubts and the insecurities that predate against us, when we hold back the true love that we have for him, the true love that we have for the Father, when we hold those things back because of the fear of men, we give the enemy an opportunity to continue to operate their grand deceptions. Their ministers are bold and courageous. Their kingdom is well financed and united in its own way, and fueling an endeavor, driving the cart down the tracks towards the kingdom of the beast. They're working very diligently day and night. For instance, we believers, if we would mutually support each other and work together to ensure, hey, the body of Messiah, when we see people who have different talents and abilities and capacities laboring in the kingdom, how can we support them? How can we encourage them? How can we cheer them along? And how can we also study and learn from them? I spend a lot of my life trying to learn and glean from those that came before me, a lot of dead men that I listen to in the books that I read, and I listen to people that are dead and buried. But their work is preserved and carries on because they sat down and took the time and had discipline enough to produce the work that could pass it on to another generation. They made disciples who make disciples who make disciples. There's guys that I will hear a message or a sermon from who have never had a concept of knowing what the days that you and I are living with would have looked like. They really didn't know. And yet their insights from their prayer closets and from their intimate understanding and studies of the word are still bearing forth fruit. And I am marveling at it today. I am still picking up the courage and the zealousness from them and wanting to be more like them. I am motivated to be like those men. I want to be like them. I want to be spurred on towards a life of sanctification. Dr. Michael Lake is one of those mentors from me from afar, a guy I don't know personally in that regard. Russ Dizdar, I didn't know him personally. But for me, these were brothers who labored on the front line faithfully for a long time. And because of that, I have the fruits of their works and their labors that I can access and I can glean from and I can be cultivated by. And it gives me a father figure that I need in my life. It gives me relatability and courage and zealousness and a call to holiness that I need to have that conviction. And when we see that going on out there in the body, we got to encourage others with it. You guys who are listening in, man, be encouraged. There is such a depth of wisdom, of understanding, of vitality of life that will help us to navigate the conspiracies that are coming against us, the deliberative acts of what the kingdom of darkness is doing to build that kingdom out. As many of you are aware, we're approaching this time where technology and man are going towards this intersection where there is this cultivated arising intelligence, this artificial intelligence that's being put on display on a regular basis. As for me, I have a perspective on it that comes from experiences of what artificial intelligence is versus what is maybe the marketed version that a lot of people are being presented with today. Branding, there's a type of just branded technologies that are normal computer software that are being branded artificially intelligent that are not the same type of thing of what I'm describing. In order for much of the beast system to be effective, artificial intelligence will be a key component with it. The creating of robotic armies, a creating of empty vessel hosts, not just physical robotic type, but people that have absented their body and allowed technology and interface to come into them. Neural link is kind of a very small scaled version of it, but the integration of the body itself and the soul itself to become completely intertwined with it. In order for these things to be successful, they have to produce a technological innovation, physical chips on such a scale that we really don't have yet. And that's why the version of artificial intelligence and the dangers of what artificial intelligence inhabit are very minuscule compared to what's really required to get there. For today, most of what's required on the technological side of it are things called GPUs, which are like graphic processing units, these little microchips, super, super small, more like postage stamp size chips that are predominantly put in computers or laptops. And these are they were really made for the gaming industry. What financed much of the system that is being used in today to build that artificially intelligence network and the inklings of the beast system was from gamers, was from people who wanted the graphics for their gaming and their video games. And those of you guys that are in that world or still a part of that world, I understand it. And it was a major part of my life for many years of my life, but it is one that I have deliberately worked my way away from because I have found the need is on the front line. The need was out here in the physical world of study and scriptures and of interceding for other brothers and sisters and to grow and mature in my life. And gaming to me was this very powerful escape mechanism, this very potent way of getting out of the present and going into a different realm. And it hooked me very hard very hard for years of my life, and I wasted much of my time. But I began to feel more and more convicted about the command of the scriptures for redeeming the time, because the days are evil. And I saw that for me as a major stronghold that was taking my life away. But what I didn't understand is my participation in the gaming industry was also what was physically financing the cultivation of this technology, to where now almost all of the GPUs that are produced today, the really advanced components, come from a single factory on Taiwan, almost all of them. And in order for them to scale up the production to run GPUs that are made for artificial intelligence, which is running a lot of parallel computation simultaneously, generates a ton of heat. And so the versions of the artificially intelligent chips, or ones that are designed to support artificial intelligence, are really, they have to be cooled down. And they'll be a much bigger size, maybe like a tablet size chip, a bigger scale chip in these server farms that'll be just cranking this stuff out. It's going to take years, it's going to take many years before they're actually at a pace to where maybe by 2026, 2027, they're able to get to scale at producing that stuff. So I understand there's limitations on the technological side of it, to where if we look at our industry, it's going to take them years to get to a place where they're able to accomplish that stuff, unless there is a massive influx of wealth and finances and resources and devotion to it. And my contention is that the kingdom of darkness, when it wants to facilitate a technology to become wholesale, they will get the entirety of the world to demand it. They will get the massive consumer index of individuals to demand it to happen. And that's why they're feeding us. My perspective is they are feeding us ChatGPT. They're feeding us these versions of AI to play with, which are really, in many ways, the elementary versions of it, of what the United States military had. Back in 2006 and 2007, I got to interact with artificial battlefield commanders, AI battlefield commanders, that were way beyond the capacity of what ChatGPT and a lot of these other things are used for, presented to us now. But this wasn't brought out to the public for nothing. This was brought out to create the demand, to create the hype and the sensationalism that people will devote their resources to get it there. And you know what? That's the strategy of the enemy, to be able to offer to people a desire. And by doing that, they will give them their time, their energy, their resources, their attention, their money, their intellect, everything. They'll give it over to them so that they can have that, the convenience of, it takes a long time to edit and make a thumbnail. I'll just turn it over to the AI to make it for me. It takes a long time to sit down and edit a video or record an audiobook. I'll just let the AI do it for me. And every time we do that, whether we recognize it or not, we're giving the beautiful gift of creativity, of artistic, unique expression, of image bearing of God that we have, the image bearer of Yahuwah that's in us. We're continually feeding it off to somebody else, and we're circumventing the tendrils of experiences, the uniqueness of life that is wholly ours. That's a gift that he gave us. And the more we abdicate it and give it off to somebody else, the diminishment of our own experiences is going to only increase, and the growth and the power and the prestige and the ability of these technologically driven powers and forces grows. And so the gift in life is to do some of those things that may be a lot harder. It's a lot more tedious, and it's going to take us a lot more time for Jubilee to sit down here and make a bunch of tortillas for our family. But you know what? Her doing that will be rewarded in a unique way, that going to the store and putting it in the bag, buying it off of the shelf and putting it on the table, and that way can never replicate. There's no imitation that will quite give us the same experiences as that will. But the more we're willing to do the disciplined labors, to do these things that require time and energy and commitment, we will be rewarded in ways that, are profitable for our long term. The cultivation of our character, the restoration of our identity, and the resounding purpose to resist evil in all of its forms. And you know what? This is the joy that is set before us, that we can rejoice every single day. And I hope you guys would rejoice today, and you guys would find ways to diligently guard against those wiles and the schemes of the wicked, because we are not ignorant of the devices of the devil, the schemes, the machinations of the devil, but we are clothed and protected. Oh, let me read it to you. Last one. Here to go. But I wanted to read this one to you. Well, don't ever forget the power. First Peter. Go there. He's got it. He's got it. I don't. You're beating me. You're winning. Keep that. To the book of James. Come on. Chapter 1. Kepha, an emissary of Yeshua, Messiah, to the chosen, strangers in the dispersion of Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia, chosen according to the foreknowledge of Elohim, set apart by the Spirit unto obedience, and the sprinkling of the blood of Yeshua Messiah, favor and peace be increased to you. Blessed be the Elohim and Father of our Master Yeshua Messiah, who according to his great compassion has caused us to be born again to a living expectation, a living hope, through the resurrection of Yeshua Messiah from the dead, to an inheritance incorruptible and undefiled and unfading, having been kept in the heavens for you, who are protected by the power of Elohim through belief for a deliverance ready to be revealed in the last time. Your belief in him, in his ways, in his kingdom, in his gospel is power of protection to you. It is that belief that ensures for you a protection. And it's not just the protection of you now, but it's the protection of the inheritance that's promised to you. And in doing these extra hard labors, there is that promissory note that is assuredly going to be given to each and every one of us who calls upon his name to overcome the ways of the world. Be steadfast, brothers and sisters. Do not lose sight of the good that the Father is doing in this world and in the lives of our brothers and sisters around here. Thank you to each of you who is praying and interceding for our family, who supports us, and who gives us the encouragement that we need to keep going. I pray that you guys would fight the good fight of faith all the way to the end. I love you all. Talk to you soon.